Welcome to the IT Career Energizer podcast. For anyone who wants to build and grow a career in IT, develop and improve your strengths and skills, be inspired and motivated by the successes of others, manage your career progression, and achieve your IT career goals. And now, your host, Phil Burgess.
Welcome to episode 329 of the IT Career Energizer podcast. My guest on today's show is the CEO and co-founder of Anvil, a platform for building full-stack web apps entirely in Python. He has a PhD in building usable programming systems from Cambridge University, and he wants to make programming more accessible for everyone. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast, Meredydd Luff.
Hello, great to be here, Phil.
Obviously, that was a very brief introduction. So perhaps, Meredydd, you could give us a bit of an insight into your role and what you do with Anvil.
So, yes, I run a startup called Anvil. We make a platform that tries to democratize web development. So if you have attempted to scale the mountain of web development, you will know that typically, to produce a traditional web application, you need to know HTML and CSS and JavaScript and maybe Python from the back end, SQL for the database, and then React and Redux and Bootstrap and Flask and SQL Alchemy and Webpack and AWS and Git. And I'm running out of fingers. I will go on all evening if you let me, just listing the things. There's a flowchart you can find somewhere on GitHub of all the things you would need to know to be, a full stack developer, and it
Yep.
melts your brain. And this is obviously extremely excluding to exclusive of people who are not spending their entire career capital on being professional web developers. And that excludes a lot of people, both beginners who are getting their start in an IT career and also people who are specialists in some other field. So, if you're a data scientist, if you're a system administrator, if your main career is somewhere else, but you would still like to be able to produce, an interactive application you can use through the web, which is, what everybody uses. So we built a platform where if you can use a little bit of Python, then that's all you need to know to build and deploy a full-stack web application. So you've got a online editor. You can go to anvil.works and try it yourself, where you can drag and drop to build your user interface, and then behind when a button gets clicked, you write the actual Python code that runs when that button gets clicked. So you're writing real code. This is not one of these no-code systems that hides everything behind a sort of 3-foot layer of foam. You are writing real programs with a real production quality language with a really deep and rich ecosystem. For example, if you're a data scientist, you're going to be wanting to bring some very sharp professional tools to bear, but you just don't have to deal with the sort of scut work involved in taking my code into my working web application somebody else can interact with. So that's what Anvil is about, and that is what I do.
Okay. And in terms of the sort of the level of knowledge you need with, for example, Python, for it to be effective, how much is it that you need to have?
So the wonderful thing about Python is that there is no single answer to that question, because the answer spans a range. Python, the language, it's a great example of this, because Python is the language that you will show to a kid who's just interested in starting out programming, maybe with something like a Raspberry Pi.
Yep.
And Python is the language that powers Instagram. And that's a pretty huge range. And the goal of Anvil is that if your Python skills are anywhere in that range, you will be able to do something useful. So we have some rank beginners who will start out and, being able to produce an if statement that does something different depending on what you've entered into a text box. That is a big deal. And, that's the point where you separate computer as something I use from computer as something I control. And, from there, the slope is downhill and fast towards creating useful applications with useful logic, all the way up to if you are a senior career developer and you want to be able to throw together something quickly, you will discover that all the power tools you are used to are there. Is there a version control system? Of course there is. Of course it's Git. Can I use CI/CD with this? Of course you can. Is it open source? Of course it is. And so the goal really is to be usable by somebody who is just starting out, who's learning just a little bit of Python. Maybe you've been working through Codecademy or something like that, through to if you're a serious expert, you will find that the tool has grown with you.
Right. Okay. And from what you're saying, then the more you know, the more you can do, presumably.
Which is exactly what programming is like from top to bottom. And I mean, really,
Indeed.
it's what programming should be like. I think the web has sort of distorted this because the way things are with traditional web development is there's not so much a learning curve as a learning cliff. If you know fewer than 4 or 5 different programming languages and several frameworks, you can't do anything at all. And like the level of learning required to actually ship something is really quite substantial. And after that, then it becomes the more you know, the more you can do. But what Anvil does is actually, I talked earlier about a beginner, with the hypothetical beginner who's just sort of starting out with if statements. If you're just starting out with that, you can't use that to produce a usable web application using traditional tools, because you need to know so much just to get it off the ground. And the goal with Anvil is that you can know a very little and get quite a bit done. And then it will scale with you smoothly as you learn more.
Good. Okay. Right. We'll come back to that, I'm sure, later on.
Oh, yes. I bet career stages are a frequent topic of conversation for you.
Indeed. So, Meredydd, can you share with us a career tip one of the audience may not be aware of and perhaps should be?
So, if you ask for someone's best, it'll be something they think should be a hoary classic. My biggest is look for what your and is. That if you are just a developer, that's actually okay. You can get a good career doing that. But if you can do that and you can do something else, or you have a particular specialism, that makes life much more interesting for you, and it makes you much more valuable as an employee. Whether you are a data scientist who can program, they're a programmer, and they're a statistician. If your background is in science, that you're a programmer and you have an understanding of, say, physics that most people won't do, and there are careers where that becomes your absolute selling point. Being at the intersection of someone who can do two different things is really valuable.
Yeah, in terms of that and as well, presumably that there has to be a relationship between those two things.
I honestly think that people overrate that, actually.
Okay.
I think that the relationship will often emerge for two reasons. One is the commonly repeated phrase that software is eating the world, which is that basically anything else out there in the world that you know about, it's going to come into contact with software. And so, the intersection will form itself. But also, even if what you know isn't a thing you can think of as directly overlapping with software, having that extra perspective is often going to let you see things that somebody who has, for example, devoted their entire career to inhaling the React stack isn't. So, for example, one of the first people we ever hired at Anvil had a degree in social sciences. And she didn't use that degree or the things she'd learned there directly once while working for us. But she was consistently somebody with an interesting perspective on how a tool like Anvil was going to be used. Not necessarily because of specific expertise she had, but because of the way that taught her to think.
Yeah. Yes, I think there's a great value in a lot of degrees, I think, as well as obviously up to PhD in the way that you actually learn. and how you then take that and apply that into whatever you do subsequently. So I'm wholeheartedly agree with that as a view.
Yeah, and of course, none of this is exclusive to academic achievements, right? Somebody who has worked on a building site is going to have a very different perspective on building something that is going to be being used by people more like their co-workers from that building site than somebody who went straight up the middle of a formal education system and ended up with a PhD. I'm again like one of the other people we hire. We like hiring interesting people. Never got a degree at university. Traveled around the world. Bartended his way across Australia. Did several other exciting things, some of which I possibly shouldn't detail. And then
Right.
did an open university degree in computing, but actually worked his way into consulting and then software development. And you'd better believe he has a great perspective on how to build a tool that's supposed to be expanding accessibility to everybody in the world.
Yes. Yeah, I can. Well, I suppose it's difficult. Obviously, everybody has their own perspective, don't they, on these things? So, but yeah, there is value from everybody's experiences, isn't there? And bringing those in. Yes.
But maybe that is my tip then. My one tip is think about what your perspective gives you special insight into, whether that perspective is a particular piece of technical expertise or life path or anything else, and find the place where that gets to make a difference, because that's where you're going to add the most value.
Yes, indeed. Excellently put. Okay. Can you share with us your worst career moment and what you learned from that experience?
Oh, no. Yes, you're going to make me do this, aren't you?
I am.
So the nadir probably came the first real production service I ever had eyes on. So I did, as you have previously hinted, I did, as you previously mentioned, do a PhD, but while I was actually at university doing that PhD, I had a sort of side gig. I was working with a startup, the first startup I was ever involved in. And it was a mobile messaging service in the Philippines. It was great fun. I learned so much. But that was the first time I'd been the primary person responsible for maintaining a service that other people depended on. And it wasn't quite pre-AWS. I think we started before AWS was really a mainstream option, but AWS was just coming into its own, and we were using standard co-location stuff. And again, I had no battle-hardened experience driving production services. I had no idea what was coming when one day something just started going wrong. Things were mysteriously slow, and then things stopped altogether, and our database wouldn't come up. And long story short, we discovered that in our co-location facility, the physical machines we were running on had degraded hard disks. And the one that had failed first was the one under heaviest load, which was the central database that had everything.
Oh, okay.
And we then had to get remote hands to in the data center to get another disk into the machine so we could copy over from the dying disk and then repair the missing sectors as best we could, and then get the Postgres database to repair its to repair things that problems that caused in the database. The backups were, of course, on another disk that was also failing and not copying off.
Dear.
And from the moment this outage began to the point where it finished with the entire service having been reconstituted on AWS, me having learned how to use AWS in that time, was about 72 hours. Okay. Mostly spent at the kitchen table in a shared student house, sort of drinking endless cups of tea and eating fast food while this thing was desperately trying to reconstitute this service that thousands of people were relying on. It was a messaging service.
Yep.
People were using this to contact their spouses and I don't know if you're familiar with the demographics of the Philippines, its main export is people. The users of this service were not, by and large, people who were texting their mates for a giggle. It was people who were working abroad, who were using, it was Yahoo Messenger back in the day, to message people back in the Philippines who then, again, this was before widespread mobile internet access, especially in poorer countries, were corresponding via this bridge that we were making via text message. So they'd get, so they'd get an IM over Yahoo. It would send them a text message. They'd reply by text. The message would go back to their spouse working as a maid in the United States.
Yeah.
And all these users were unable to use our service, unable to communicate, while this rebuild of this thing that had completely, blindsided me on an ordinary Tuesday morning, that was pretty bad as moments in a career go.
Yes. So how successful was the recovery?
The recovery was complete. I learned some information that's been squirreled away in the back pocket and has once or twice come out to save the day about how to nurse an extremely sick Postgres cluster back into health.
Yep.
And believe it or not, the business survived. We took a hit. A bunch of people cancelled their subscriptions. We issued an awful lot of refunds, but people still needed what we were providing, and the business survived and indeed continued growing. I'm astonished they forgave us, but I'm very glad they did.
Indeed. Yeah, and in terms of what you took away from that experience, was there anything you took forward in terms of a learning?
So a few things. One was I was never, from that moment, even though it was early days, I was never one of the people who doubted the value of cloud on demand versus hosted service on demand, because even if the latencies of the latter to get something set up are just a couple of hours, that is a couple of hours that you sometimes really don't have, and being able to drive this stuff instantly was very, very important. I learned a bunch of technical information about things to always watch out for if you are running on real hardware and things you should have monitoring alerts on.
Yes.
And I think it was also, as they say, character building. It did sort of prepare me for a world in which, to quote Brian Cantrell, who is an amazing speaker, and you should go find his talks on YouTube, production is war. Things are going to come at you out of the corner of your eye when you are not expecting it if you are running a production service like that. And it sort of, it set my bar for how bad things could get and made me a lot more chilled when dealing with production incidents in the future.
Yes. Good. Okay. And maybe something a little bit more positive. Can you tell us about your career highlights so far?
So I would have to say that the highlight of my career has been starting and building Anvil. The point where it went from a problem that, so my PhD is in building usable programming systems.
Yeah.
I have a friend called Ian. I've known him since we were 18. His is in human-computer interaction. When those two people get together to put the world to rights, you'd bet there's going to be a lot of complaining about something like the usability disaster of web development, that it needs so much and it's so complex. And seeing something go from something that we always knew was bad but had no real answer to a possibility for, wait, someone should fix this, and we kind of have an idea of how it would happen, to, well, it might as well be us, to having an actual company and a team working on this, and people out there. I pull up a metrics dashboard and see 4 digits of events per second going through this thing. It's been incredible. Just building something speculatively with your own 2 hands, and then seeing it out there being really used by real people who are getting real value from it is, that's the best feeling ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm not going to narrow it down to a period of a few days, but the process of building Anvil has got to be my highlight.
Sure. No, that's quite understandable. Yes. Okay. Meredydd, can you tell us what excites you about the future of the industry and in particular careers in IT?
So, about the future of the industry, I think that the great and most exciting thing about the industry today is that with the proliferation of things like cloud services and things like the endless variety of web frameworks, we've reached the point where anyone can do this. Now, I would complain that it's a little bit like the thing about anyone can become president of the United States. Well, maybe, but not everyone can. And certainly the bar to doing it is high. But there is that sense that wherever you are, if you are willing to crawl over this, landscape of jagged boulders that is the development tools you're using, there is nothing stopping you anywhere from building something real, putting it out there and having people use it. And nobody cares if you had no capital to do it because you're renting the computers by the minute. Nobody cares that you're 16 years old, because if you can do it, you can do it. And if you do it, they can. And if you do it and it's useful, people can use it, and you don't need that. There aren't credential checks. You don't have to, go and sign a 4-figure contract with anybody. You can just get up and do it. So that's what excites me most.
That's fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Okay, we're going to go into the reveal round now. We're going to find out a little bit more about you and the way you think. You ready for this?
Okay, let's do this.
Right. So what first attracted you to a career in IT?
Long before I realized it was a career, it was just the most fun toy anybody had ever introduced me to. I started back, in the MS-DOS days on QBasic, and it was introduced to me as a toy. I treated it as a toy, and then sometime, sort of probably around early teens, it dawned on me that this could be a thing I could do when I grew up. And from that moment on, it was very obvious what I was going to be doing, because it turns out that that's a thing you can do. Okay, then, well, that's what I am.
Exactly, yes. Okay, and what is the best career advice you've ever received?
So this may be specific to me, but it's probably the older developer I met at sort of an open source meetup when I was applying to university. I didn't read computer science at undergrad. I was a biologist. My degree's in neuroscience. And I wanted to go do that because it was fun, because I already by that point knew that computers will be with me for all of my life. But I also really enjoyed learning about about biology and about how our bodies worked, and realized that this was my chance to actually go deeper into that. Computers would always be with me. This opportunity wouldn't. But I was still kind of nervous about it. And the more senior open source developer who I met at a meetup, who sort of validated that choice really and said, yes, you can absolutely do it, and it doesn't stop you from doing a high-powered career or even a research PhD in this. It's okay, to do your undergrad in what you enjoy, and then you can sort the rest out later.
Right.
And that, by the way, is a massive, massive advantage of what we have. If you are one of these lucky people, and I acknowledge I was very lucky to be in that position, it was a huge privilege, but if you are one of these people who already has the bit between their teeth here, the fact that there are so many routes into this career means that you can afford to follow your heart.
Yes. Yeah. And this is obviously maybe a little bit more difficult to answer, but what is the worst career advice you've ever received?
So this would have to be the person around the end of my PhD when I was looking at what to do next, and I'd sort of stumbled into an interview with a particular company I shan't name, but they were doing very well. They were clearly on their way to IPO, and this person told me, you're a fool to consider doing anything else. Looking at the value of their options, every month you go by before accepting that offer is probably lighting, thousands of pounds on fire. And I ignored him. And I went for the thing that I thought would be more fun.
Right. Yes. Okay.
And that was, nothing particularly wrong with that company. They do very well in their niche, but I didn't feel excited, energized, if you will, about going there. And the advice to suck it up and do it anyway, it's an opportunity you can't afford to miss, was advice I'm very glad I didn't take.
Yeah, I think that boils down typically to the values that you have for whatever role you're looking for, I suppose. And it didn't match your values.
I think it wasn't particularly about that. It wasn't particularly about values. It was about my motivation for doing this, about what I would enjoy. It was really most of all about valuing myself and my own experience. Again, we have the luxury to do things that we think will be enjoying and satisfying and fulfilling. And we shouldn't feel, because we are in such a financially well-performing industry, we can afford to choose those pieces of our own well-being over what looks like an exciting ephemeral financial opportunity. And that's what we did.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. And if you were to begin your career again in today's world, what would you do?
Given the way that I began it, which is to say as a toy, that version of me in 2021 is probably being given a Raspberry Pi and plugging it into the family TV and discovering that he can play with things that way, is probably doing the same, sort of going out probably onto the internet today and finding tutorials and examples and learning from there and digging into the places where it's okay to play. Open source software is big on this. I think it would be broadly similar, to be honest. I think that if you are the tinkering type, then tinkering your way into this career is as valid a choice as ever. Yes,
that's true. Yeah. And what career objectives are you currently focusing on?
Well, I'm running a startup. You know what startups are about. We are making Anvil better. We are literally doing tests where we sit down somebody who knows a bit of Python or a lot of Python but has never seen this before, has never done any web programming before, and crudely setting a stopwatch for the time between there and the point where their face inevitably lights up as they realize that they can do this now. They have the power to put a web application on the internet. Of course, it's a little bit more sophisticated than that. We are making notes about the things that they stumble into, the things they have trouble with, the inevitable frustrations anyone has encountering a new programming environment. And the objective is to just sand down that path, remove the splinters, remove the things that they can fall over, to make starting to go from I can program a little bit, or even I can program a lot, to I can build a web application entirely in Python as smooth as humanly possible. And that is my sort of personal career and little contribution to the state of humanity objective.
Right. Okay. I'm tempted to ask you a question that you probably can't even answer. But,
hit me.
It's more about this objective of obviously making the best product that you can.
Yes.
Do you have a view of a point where you're going to reach the point where there's little value in trying to improve it? If you see what I mean. How close are you to the point where you say it's as good as we want it to be?
I think that is a question that occurs at different times for different products, because there are things that are essentially finished and they do everything that you want them to do already, and further fiddling with them mostly irritates the existing users because they move all the ways to get their job done around, so they have to learn how to use it all over again. I think programming tools are different here in that there is so much complexity. There are always new things to make easier that are too hard in the world. I don't see a bottom in how deep we can dig to make the experience of web programming easier.
Fine. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Definitely. And what is the number one non-technical skill that has helped you in your career so far?
For me, it's probably the natural luck of being an extrovert, talking to people is important.
Yep.
Caring about people. I don't know whether to attribute that one to genes, upbringing, my parents, luck, or whatever, but actually looking at the people who are using it and going, so what's going on inside your head is by far the most useful non-technical skill I have. And by the way, that is very much not confined to people who are using the things you build. In your career, you will spend most of your time interacting in some sense with the people around you on your team, your peers, your bosses, your subordinates, and having a curiosity and interest in what is going on inside their heads and what they want gets you an awful long way. The phrase we sometimes use is brute force and empathy. Fundamentally, there's a lot you can not know about management, and we started from scratch. Boy, did we not know a lot about management, but you can get an awful long way with well-intentioned empathy.
Yeah, that's true. And what do you do to keep your own career energized?
I mean,
other than running a startup.
Well, I was about to say, if running a startup and simultaneously breaking new technical ground in an area that you personally deeply care about isn't energizing, then maybe this isn't the career for you, because I love it.
Probably. Yes, exactly. That's fair enough. And what do you do in your spare time, assuming you have some, away from technology?
We really make a point of having some, and we make a point of leading by example that everybody else in the company has some as well, because you're no good to anybody burnt out. And as you may have noticed as a theme from this, we are, you have one life and you are here to enjoy yourself. And working hard does not mean flogging yourself to death. So yes, absolutely. Time away from technology is a thing that exists. I fly airplanes. So I learned to fly. That was what I spent the proceeds of the Filipino startup I worked on during my PhD on.
Right. Okay.
Which is enormous fun. That was something I've wanted to do since I was very, very, very small, and it turns out that little boy Meredydd had exactly the right ideas. Well done him. It really is enormously fun. The other thing I do is I dance. So I did ballroom and Latin at university. I used to compete with a formation Latin team. Now it's much more social, but obviously that's not really a particularly popular pastime during a pandemic for some reason. So that one's kind of on hold.
Yes, understandable. Yes, I think you've got to be a particular type of person, I think, to want to be to learn to fly or be a pilot. Definitely.
I mean, yes, but I do think the sort of person is the sort of person who wants to.
Yes.
This is something that, people who don't work in IT will often think about our careers. It's like, that sounds deathly dull. Congratulations, you sound like somebody who wouldn't enjoy doing what I do. Don't. But, for the people who enjoy it, it is obviously fun. I do think it teaches you a lot about your own cognitive processes, though, and your human fallibility, because so much of it is about how you make decisions under pressure or under stress, or while there's lots of input to accumulate. And obviously that doesn't happen most of the time, but you want to hone those skills so that you can when it does. And I think that kind of sort of deep contemplation of my own fallibility, and not just contemplation, but like an example of a systematic system of putting roadblocks in the way of my own mistakes, that is, a large part of the discipline of flying, has been sort of philosophically illuminating to the rest of my life as well. It's not just contemplating your own fallibility. It is contemplating your own fallibility as a problem that can be systematically mitigated.
Okay, by your actions.
Yes, by your actions, like by things like checklists.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
By things like ways you can construct your life, your work, to avoid making bad mistakes.
Yes. Yeah, understood. Okay. Meredydd, can you share with us a parting piece of career advice?
I don't think I have anything better than what I opened with. Find the thing that is interesting to you, that you know about, that you have a unique perspective on, and bring that to an IT career.
Yeah, that's well said. And how can we find out more about you and connect with you?
So, you could find me. I'm on Twitter at Meredydd, Meredydd. I'm sorry, it's Welsh. You're just going to have to live with it.
Yeah.
More interestingly, you can find Anvil at anvil.works. It is, of course, free to use. You can just sign up and start building something. There are a bunch of tutorials on, do you want to build a dashboard? Would you like to build something more interesting? Would you like to build a to-do list application? Would you like to build something specific to your industry? So go check those out. You can also find us on Twitter at Anvil_works. And if you want to tweet something at me that you've built, do so. I am likely to respond positively.
Great. Meredydd, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hi, Phil here again. Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with today's guest. You can find full show notes on the website at itcareerenergizer.com/e and the number of the episode you've been listening to. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, please make sure that you do so that you get episodes automatically downloaded to your device every Monday. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the IT Career Energizer podcast. To find out more about building a successful career in IT, visit itcareerenergizer.com.